One of the pitfalls of living in Mexico is, I guess I could say one of the many pitfalls of living in Mexico, is it's a very loud country. And the reason I'm talking about that now is because I'm going to have some background noise. I'm sure the microphone is picking it up. I'm going to have to talk louder, I think, even than I normally talk. I have a pretty loud voice, but there's music outside. There's a little mini supermarket that opened across the street from my house about a month ago. And I guess today they're having their grand celebration. They have a guy out there with big speakers, and they have girls dancing. I'm not kidding. They actually have 3 girls dancing. They're wearing short skirts and tight shirts, and they're dancing, and they're doing little acts. And they have this guy playing really, really bad music like a DJ. And this woke me up this morning. I work 6 days a week. I only get 1 day a week to sleep in, and that's Sunday, and that's today. He woke me up this morning. I actually went over there, asked them if they could turn it down. They said no. I've done videos before where I've had this problem. I've asked people to turn things down. They say no. So apologies for the noise. It's very important that this little mini supermarket has really loud music, really bad music, and girls dancing to attract people into their little meaningless store. Anyway, continuing today, I checked my records, and it turns out this is episode 20. People like things that end in a 0. Anything that ends in a 0, people make a big deal out of, big fanfare. No fanfare here, but I will say that out of 20 episodes, today is the first episode. I'm going to make a dedication, and that dedication is to my friend. He knows who he is, Kevin Montavon. He's the reason I'm dedicating it to him is because today I'm going to talk about Pantera. As you can already see in the title, and that's probably why you click this, is because you're a Pantera fan. And when I started doing these, I started with Motorhead only for the reason that it was Motorhead Day. That was on May 8th, and I thought, I'm going to talk about Motorhead. And then I thought, I'm going to talk about Iron Maiden and Kiss and Metallica, my top 4 bands. And I thought, nah, you know what, I could also maybe expand that to a couple of other ones, my real influential early bands. I thought that would be it. And Kevin asked me at least twice, maybe 3 times, are you going to do Panthera? Are you going to do Panthera? And I said, nah, because I thought Pantera, for me, they came along a little bit too late for me to count as, for me, what I thought was a real influence on me. And I'll talk about when I got into Panthera lately. But I said, nah, I'm not going to do that. Plus, I had a very strict self-imposed rule that I could only talk about a band's full catalog, their full discography. And I said, nah, those early Panthera albums, I don't really, not really know them. I don't know them at all. And I can't really talk about them. And I thought it would be cheating if I only started with Cowboys from Hell. So I said, no, I'm not gonna do it. So he asked me again, so are you gonna do Pantera? And and then maybe he asked me a 3rd time. So Kevin, and I should say, I'll plug his podcast. He has a podcast on YouTube with his friend Todd. It's called Ticket Stubs. Ticket Stubs. If you go on YouTube and search for Ticket Stubs podcast, you'll see it's these 2 guys, Kevin and Todd, talking about. They go through alphabetically A through Z. I think this week they're to N, I think, and they talk about their experiences at concerts. These guys blow me away when it comes to concerts. I've been to hundreds. I've been to maybe 400. They've been to a lot more than that. I don't even want to guess the number, but they've been to a lot more concerts than I have, both of them. So this is for Kevin, for inspiring me to go beyond the first 5 episodes of this podcast. Sorry for the air quotes. So for Kevin, here's finally Pantera. I'm going to talk about Pantera. I'm going to go through their whole discography like I've done other times. I'm going to tell you about my concert history with Pantera, my t-shirt, what Pantera t-shirts I've had. I'm going to tell you about one of my biggest concert regrets in 36, almost 37 years of going to concerts. Pantera has a spot in my biggest concert regrets. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about my favorite Pantera songs, Pantera history, maybe some other little nuggets. So I'm going to start, and as I mentioned, I'm not familiar with their first 4 albums. Pantera started in 1983. I can tell you my Pantera history kind of has two sections. The first, I was aware of Pantera. I'll get later when I get to the Pantera album. That was my first one that I bought, that I became a fan. I'll talk about that later. But I did know about Pantera, I guess in the mid or late 80s. If I remember correctly, I heard or first saw or heard Pantera. There used to be this heavy metal video magazine. They came out once a month or every 2 or 3 months or something like that, called Hard and Heavy. And I used to buy them occasionally when I came across them. They weren't always readily available, but I did buy them. And if I remember correctly, I'm sure my first exposure to Pantera was in those Hard and Heavy videos. But I knew them. I saw ads in magazines, I think, for Pantera. And I just as a metal fan, they were on my radar. Never liked them in those early days. I just wasn't interested in them, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. How that progressed, or how that morphed. And so I'm going to start with their first album was called Metal Magic. And since I don't have the actual physical CD or album to show you, I have to go to the track listing here on the Wikipedia. I did listen to them. I've listened to them this week, or I think I listened to one last week. So I don't have too much to say about the first 3, 4, let's say 4 Pantera albums, the independently released Pantera albums. I heard a few songs over the years, and now in the internet age, of course, you can go back and listen to anything. These current listens that I did in this last week, I'm sure it was the first time I've listened to those albums in full. I'd heard, maybe every couple of years, Pantera comes on my radar. The old albums come on my radar. I listen to Pantera all the time. But the old albums come up, and you go on YouTube and you search for a song, and you listen to a song, and you think, that's crap, and you move on. Well, I listened to all 4 albums, and this is what I have to say. So the first one was Metal Magic in 1983. Just going through the track listing here, I can't say too much about them. The very first Pantera song on the very first Pantera album, Metal Magic, was called Ride My Rocket. And it has a very, very clear, very obvious Detroit Rock City influence in the first, the opening. It sounds totally like Detroit Rock City. I don't have too much to say about any of these albums. They had another song called, let me go through here, Latest Lover. That one also had, I think, a Kiss influence. I think they said love 'em, leave 'em in those lyrics, which was a great Kiss song from Rock and Roll Over. And then just some really bad, just going by the song titles, Nothing On But the Radio. Some of these song titles, they're like Autograph, or these 80s bands, which Pantera were an 80s band. They had another song called Rock Out. Really bad stuff. Nothing On But the Radio, Rock Out, Metal Magic, Ride My Rocket. Bad stuff. So I can't say too much about that. Metal Magic 1983. Next, I'm going to pretend that I'm showing you Projects in the Jungle. Now, I will say that as they went on in these first 4 albums, they did get a little bit better. You slowly, you could see them changing into the Panthera that became, what everybody knows as Pantera. But the next one was 1984, Projects in the Jungle. And I guess when they did these albums, obviously they had a different singer back then. It's a guy called Terry Glaze, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later, about him, Terrence Glaze. And so you could see a few flashes of what Pantera would become. So Projects in the Jungle, 1984. Again, not too much to say here. They had a song called Blue Light Turning Red, which was, I guess you could see, maybe the first influence of Eddie Van Halen on Dimebag. Blue Light Turning Red, or Blue Light, Blue Light Turning Red. I thought it was Red Light Turning Blue, something like that. Blue Light Turning Red was basically a guitar solo. It was similar in the similar vein as Van Halen Eruption, of course, on the first Van Halen album. it didn't have the same impact as Eruption did, or as Eddie Van Halen did, or Pantera didn't have the same impact as Van Halen. Another song was called like Fire, which reminded me of a Rat song. Not a particular Rat song, it just sounded like a song that could have been on a Rat album. And I love Rat. I did one of these videos for Rat, one of my favorite bands. So it's not an insult, it's just saying how much Panthera has changed. In Over My Head was another one that had the 80s metal style. Kind of reminded me of Dokken or Tesla. Especially the vocals. This guy Terrence Glaze really sounded like Jeff Keith in that song, In Over My Head. Heavy Metal Rules. Man, Pantera had a song called Heavy Metal Rules. Just really, really bad, cheesy stuff. It's no wonder they don't want to re-release this stuff. It was put on your leather, strap on your spikes. Me and the boys are on fire tonight, or we're going out tonight, or hot rocking tonight. I'll put my fist high in the air. Just garbage, man. And then another song, also I thought was like Dokken, called Only a Heartbeat Away. So that had more, like I said, a few flashes of Pantera brilliance, we could say, especially with Dimebag. Back then, he was the star of the show. You could even argue that right to the end, Dimebag was Pantera. Next, 1985, I Am the Night. The main thing that I gathered from this album, or that I noticed on this album, full of what I think are electronic drums. I don't know if they are or not, but they sounded, I guess in 1985, bands were using electronic drums, and I think Pantera was one of them. And just really bad song titles. Hot and Heavy, Onward We Rock. They had a song called, I lost it here, Daughters of the Queen, which I think that one had a lot of, to me, what sounded like electronic drums. Just not very good. Now at this point, or at some point after this, Terry Glaze, the singer, left Pantera. He started, I'm not sure in what year, maybe 88 or 89, a new band called Lord Tracy, and they had one album called Deaf Gods of Babylon. I love that album. I bought, when I first got my first CD player in 1989, Deaf Gods of Babylon by Lord Tracy was one of the first CDs I ever bought, maybe the third. I know the first two I bought them on the same day, were the Ace Frehley, because you care about these kind of things. The Ace Frehley 1978 solo album, and the debut album by Dirty Looks, if anybody remembers Dirty Looks. I bought those two albums. I think I bought Deaf Gods of Babylon by Lord Tracy around that time. I love that album. That album, Deaf Gods of Babylon by Lord Tracy, for me, way, way, way better than any of these first three Pantera albums. So just a little aside there of Terry Glaze, what became of him. So now Phil Anselmo joined the band in 86, 87, something like that. And they had their first album with him, which is called Power Metal, which I know when you, now that we live in the internet age, and we've been in the internet age for quite a long time now, 20, 25 years, you come across opinions, and from what I see, a lot of people love this album. I don't. The aforementioned Kevin Montalban, when I told him, I can't talk about Pantera because I don't really like, or I don't really know those first four albums, he said, Power Metal has some good stuff. I disagree. It did. It was the fourth, and it did have more of these little flashes, but still, for me, nothing on Power Metal was good. It was heavier. Each album got a little bit, I would say, less 80s metal or party rock, and became more like a little bit more real metal. This Power Metal album in 1987 was very Judas Priest, like Painkiller, even though Painkiller came out like 3 years later. When I listened to Power Metal, it made me think of Judas Priest generally, but specifically Painkiller. And what else to say about this one? The first song was Rock the World. The drums, for 2.5 seconds, totally reminded me of a great song called Heavy Metal Shuffle by Kick-Axe. Canadian, like me. Go listen to Kick-Axe Vices. It's an excellent album. I wish I could talk about Kick-Axe Vices. Maybe I will. And then, but still, the song titles on this, Proud to Be Loud. They had a song called Proud to Be Loud. Down Below, yeah, it was Down Below. Reminded me of, or later, The Art of Shredding, which was on Cowboys from Hell, the last song on Cowboys from Hell, which I'm going to talk about next. It seems like that maybe came from a little bit of Down Below. At least in my opinion, Down Below retroactively reminded me of The Art of Shredding on Cowboys from Hell. So that's it. So you could divide Pantera into 2 categories or even 3 categories. You could say it's the first 4 albums, the independent albums, and then when they became really Pantera, the next 4. Or you could say the first 3, and then power metal was kind of like the bridge between their first 3 kind of hard rock years, or first 3 albums, and then what they became later. So I can put this phone away and switch to Aimed at You, Cowboys from Hell. This was when I got into Pantera. This came out in 1990. Oh, and something about the other the first 3. I'll put this down for a minute. The first 3 or 4 Pantera albums, especially first 3, horrible album covers. About the worst album covers you'll ever see. Now, some bands, like let's say Exciter with Violence and Force, Anthrax, Fistful of Metal, even Metallica, Kill 'Em All. The metal bands back then, they had pretty cheesy album covers, but some of them in retrospect, I think Anthrax, at the time I thought the Anthrax cover was cool, and Violence and Force. Exciter was cool. And then over the years, you think, maybe they're kind of cheesy. And then maybe after further years, you look back and you say, cool, they were cool for the time. I've never thought those first 3 Pantera albums looked good at all. And I don't know who the artists were for any of those, but they were really bad, especially the first one, Metal Magic. Got to be one of the worst album covers ever. And it will be interesting to see what would have happened if Pantera had not become Panthera, how those first 3 albums would have been viewed. I don't know if anybody would, talk about them or remember them. And just last week, I think, or this week, maybe last week, Pantera announced that they're, I'm going to talk about that later. I saw something else about Pantera on one of these heavy metal websites. It was a little clip, a podcast, I think, that Terry Glaze did with somebody, talking about the possibility of re-releasing those early Pantera albums. I don't care, but just funny timing. So, Cowboys from Hell. Now this one, this was the first, as I said, the first one I bought. I bought this I've mentioned before that I used to write dates. Interesting, I didn't realize. I bought this November 10th, 1990 in Florida. I didn't realize I bought that in Florida. This is kind of related to my biggest concert regret. So I bought this in 1990. I'd seen the video for Cowboys from Hell, I don't know when, probably not too long before that. Loved it. I couldn't believe this Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, was the same band that I had heard occasionally these really bad songs from earlier, through the mid 80s. And so I loved Cowboys from Hell, the song, loved the video. And so I did buy this album. Now, to me, as I mentioned, I think a lot of people think that power metal bridged the gap between bad Pantera and Pantera. But I think, for me, this was... I still don't love this album the way that I do the next ones that I'm going to talk about. I love about half of it. For me, there are about 5, maybe 6 great songs on this. And there are still a few that, maybe sound like they could have been on the early albums, especially power metal. But the title track, Cowboys from Hell, is great. Primal Concrete Sledge is, I would say, my favorite song on this album. There's nothing on this album that I would say is a front runner for being one of my favorite. I always feel like I have to do this when I say Pantera. Nothing on this album that I would say is one of the front runners for one of my favorite Pantera songs ever. But pretty close. Primal Concrete Sledge is a fantastic song. Psycho Holiday, that was a pretty good song. Hearsay was an excellent song. Cemetery Gates, I know a lot of people love that song. I like it, not even close to a favorite, but I do like it. One of my in the top half of the songs on this album that I like. Domination is another one. For me, the top two on this album for me are Primal Concrete, Sledge, and Domination. Although I do love Cowboys from Hell. That riff is fantastic. After that, it seems that for me the last half of this album was more like power metal. Shattered, Clash with Reality, Medicine Man, Message in Blood. Which one was it that was that? It was Medicine Man or Message in Blood. Those were again, I think, a little bit similar to Judas Priest Painkiller album. I didn't like. I think, I don't know if I'm in the minority. I didn't like Phil Anselmo's Rob Halford. You know, his really high range. I mean, I know it's very incredible that he could sing like that, because I know he can't now, and nothing wrong with that. But I never really liked that style of vocals, those really high pitched vocals. And then The Art of Shredding is good too. I think The Art of Shredding, I don't like it as much as I did at the time. It sounds a little bit cheesy now, but still one of the better songs. So I'd say the first 6 songs are good to excellent, really good to excellent. And The Art of Shredding is also pretty good. But then Clash with Reality, Medicine Man, Messenger of Blood, and The Sleep, not my favorite. So this is, as I said, for me, this was my introduction to Panthera. And everything changed after this one. So 1990, and my concert regret, one of my biggest concert regrets, one that I mentioned when I did Pearl Jam. And these were about a year apart. I was a Pearl Jam fan before they were Pearl Jam. I was into Mother Love Bone when they were a band, and they were playing a show in Toronto. I was living in Toronto at the time, and they were playing at the Diamond Club. This was in 1989 with Dogs d'Amour. I told this story briefly in my when I did this video for Pearl Jam. And I didn't like Dogs d'Amour. I didn't like them at all. I thought, I don't want to go see Dogs d'Amour, even though I love Mother Love Bone. So I didn't go to that. Maybe I had my nose in the air because I didn't want to see Dogs d'Amour. And then, of course, Andy Wood died, and Mother Love Bone ceased to exist, or they became Pearl Jam. So I missed my opportunity to see Mother Love Bone. Similar with Pantera. Pantera, it's funny, I had totally forgotten that I bought this album in Florida. So I was in Florida. The day I came back, which was, now this was, if I bought Cowboys from Hell November 10th, it must have been a week later, a few days later. I was in Florida for a week. And when I got home, it was on a Sunday afternoon. And my friend Don Robinson, he called me, or he had left a message or something saying that Pantera was playing in Toronto that night. I think it was at the same place, at the Diamond Club, where Mother Love Bone had played a year earlier. And he said, Pantera is playing in Toronto, let's go. He had free tickets. He used to work for, I'm not sure at that point he was working at a record store or for a record label or a record company. But anyway, he either had free tickets or he said, we're on the guest list, something. He said, let's go. And I called him and I said, nah, you know what, I just got back from Florida. I've been traveling. I'm just not into it. And so that would have been my first, and then shortly after Pantera really, blew up. So I did miss my chance to see Pantera on the Cowboys from Hell tour, which I do regret that now. There are a lot of bands I didn't see, or a lot of concerts I didn't see, but I had my choice to see them, and I don't really care that I didn't see them, but that is one that I regret. And it must have been their second time in Toronto on that tour, because they played there earlier, and Rob Halford came and sang with them. They were playing at Rock and Roll Heaven. Pantera was playing at Rock and Roll Heaven, and Judas Priest was rehearsing in Toronto for the Painkiller tour. And Rob Halford, I saw that live. Rob Halford was on Much Music. He said Pantera is the most dangerous band in the world, and he went and he sang Grinder with Pantera at Rock and Roll Heaven. So that's not part of my regret. But so Pantera, one of my biggest concert regrets. Maybe Mother Love Bone is number one. Missing Pantera on Cowboys from Hell tour, probably number two. So that's Cowboys from Hell and my story of Cowboys from Hell. Next was 1992. They kept getting, this was of course Vulgar Display of Power in 1992. I saw this this video, maybe I must have bought this in April or May. Where's my date? Oh, February 25th, 1992 was when I bought Vulgar Display of Power. It must have, I think it must have come out in January or February. But I saw the video for Mouth for War on Much Music. And if I remember correctly, it was a Saturday. And as soon as that video finished, I went over to the mall and immediately bought, when malls were a thing and when CDs were a thing, and I bought Vulgar Display of Power. I couldn't believe, and I had a similar situation with Saigon Kick in 1990 or 91, the first Saigon Kick album. Saw the video for What You Say, went and bought the CD immediately. But this was like Pantera. You know, they were going slowly in the first three. Power Metal was a little bit steeper. Cowboys from Hell was a little steeper, and Vulgar Display of Power, I think, just was. I hate this term, but it was a game changer. It changed everything. This was in Pantera said. I don't think it was Cowboys from Hell. I think it was Vulgar Display of Power, where they said, we're Pantera, and this is what we're gonna do. This has become a classic album. It's not my favorite Panthera album, but I do love it. And probably every song on this was a favorite at some point. There are not too many albums I could say that every song was a favorite at some point. This was unbelievably heavy. It sounded, I guess the sound was similar to Cowboys from Hell, but gone were the Phil Anselmo high voice, screaming like Rob Halford, as I mentioned, that I wasn't really a fan of. This was much more aggressive. I think musically it was about the same as Cowboys from Hell, but this they really stepped it up on here. The attitude was there. And it was very angry, but it had a very positive feel. I would say now going through this one, probably A New Level was my over the years. You change your favorites. I would say over the years, A New Level is the one that has stuck with me as being my favorite on this album, and in my short list of favorite Pantera songs ever. What else? Walk. A lot of people are too cool to. It's like Walk, Ace of Spades. I don't know. When bands have a hit, for some reason, a lot of the cool fans, I guess, say that song that sucks. Or again, now in the internet age, you can't read anything without reading dumbass comments, and so anytime Pantera comes up, you'll always see somebody say, especially if it's Walk, somebody will say, it's not even their best song. Whatever, it's a great song. I did get a little bit tired of it, but it was on, the video was played all the time, but man, Walk is a great song. And maybe one of my favorite solos too, one of my favorite Dimebag solos. That's a great song. Rise, that was a little bit, I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but da-na-na, 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 like, what's that song by Helmet? Helmet had an album out, I think the year before, called Meantime, which I really like that album. I think the song was Unsung. And Pantera, I don't know if they ripped it off, but it really sounded like Unsung. No problem for me, because I love both of those songs. No Good, Attack the Radical. Maybe fitting the lyrics now. In the States, there's a problem with race because of ignorant past burn fires. From evolution, we've been killing each other. I think that man should have it down to a science. No chance, not for a minute, not for a second. I won't be defensive. I'm straight out. In my opinion, you better listen to a man who knows what he's saying. You better listen to a man who knows. I've seen your side. You run and hide from the mere fact that you feel inferior. Be superior, and now you're inferior. Something like that. Love that song. No Good. Attack the Radical. Not the radical left, like somebody talks about every day now, but just Attack the Radical. Live in a Hole, great groove. That had that Pantera groove. Dun, 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 dun. Every song on here is amazing. Regular People, dun, 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 dun. Love that one too. By Demons Be Driven and Hollow. A classic heavy metal album. Not my personal favorite Pantera album, but this is definitely their signature album. If you like to put things into categories, this is the album that Pantera will be remembered for. This is obviously their biggest seller. This is the one that, if anybody only knows Pantera from one album or one song, it's this one. So this is great. The album cover. I spoke earlier about the early Pantera albums, how they had horrible album covers. They didn't get any better after that. All Pantera album covers suck. This is their best one, in my opinion, and it's still I guess I like it. But the next albums that came, and Cowboys from Hell too, Pantera, their album covers sucked. They were all really bad. But this one is pretty good. At least this one gets your attention. So Vulgar Display of Power, a true heavy metal classic album. That one is. 1994. Now I should say they played Toronto on that tour. Vulgar Display of Power. I didn't go. I don't know why. I was a huge Pantera fan. I was 2 albums in at that point. I was dedicated. I don't know why I didn't go see Pantera. They played at the concert hall in I guess 92, and I don't know why I didn't go see. Anyway. So 1994, Far Beyond Driven. Pantera sells out, right? This was a #1 album. Even it charted. I don't think it sold as many, but in the end, but it charted higher than Vulgar Display of Power, which peaked. I have no idea. This was a #1 album, if you can believe that. Hard to imagine that. A band like Pantera and an album like Far Beyond Driven was #1. But it's a total sellout album. Complete sellout album. Pantera threw away all of their past and they sold out and they were #1 and they made a lot of money. And because that's what selling out is, right? When you change your style and you become more popular, that's what selling out is. This is one of my top 5 albums ever of all time. But, people like to talk about, especially metal fans, everything is a sellout. Whenever anything is big or popular, it's a sellout. And they changed their sound. They were much more, this was much more aggressive. I would say the gap between this and Vulgar Display of Power is bigger than the gap between Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power, and maybe even bigger than the gap between power metal and Cowboys from Hell. I love this album. One of my, as I said, it's hard to say top 5 or top 10, or I could even, I almost choked there. Far beyond choking. I could even make the argument that this could be, wait for it, my favorite album ever. The only thing that maybe would prevent me from saying that, for whatever that's worth, is that it came out too late. It's hard to compare this with, I got into Kiss. I got Kiss Alive when I was 6 years old, and I got Rain and Blood when I was 16, and Among the Living when I was 17, and Master of Puppets when I was 16, and Back in Black when I was 10. So if this had come out around that time, maybe this would be my favorite. But I like this just as much as any album ever created by any band in the history of recorded music. I can't say enough how much I love this album. This album for me, God, this album is 1994. I swear I listened to this album every day in 1994, and I still love it. I probably never go more than a month without listening to at least part of it, at least a couple of songs. I would say at least maybe once a year I do listen to the whole thing. This is even better than Vulgar Display of Power. As I said, every song was a favorite. Amazing that a band could put out 2 albums in a row that I could consider every song a favorite. Not just that I like the song, not just that I love the song, but that it's a favorite. And Far Beyond Driven was like that. just and amazing to think that this album was number one. Vulgar Display of Power was angry, but as I said, it was more like a positive, like a powerful album, kind of about self-strength and I don't know. I think especially determination. No one can piss on this determination in Mouths for War, but Far Beyond Driven was angry and mean and harsh and abrasive and aggressive and just like it hated the world. If an album was capable of spewing hate, this album was. It just sounded very, very angry is not even the word. Just a friend of mine, we used to talk about who was angrier, Pantera or Rage Against the Machine, or Phil Anselmo or Zach De La Rocha, and I love Rage Against the Machine. And we came to the conclusion that Phil Anselmo, nobody was angrier than Phil Anselmo. And I would also say this was the peak of Phil Anselmo's vocals. Not that he got bad after that, and not that he wasn't good before that, but on this album and the tour, and I did see this tour, which I'll talk about, I guess, in a few minutes. For me, the only person the only singer, the only guy that I would put in the same category as Phil Anselmo in this era was James Hetfield. Those two guys, Phil Anselmo and James Hetfield, their voices sounded inhuman. Like you think, how can the human voice sound like that? Not just strength, but again, for whatever it's worth, range and power and anger, and just everything was perfect. I would say James Hetfield in the and Justice for All era, and Phil Anselmo, Far Beyond Driven era, are my two favorite vocals ever. So I've been talking, about 4 or 5 minutes about this, and I haven't even mentioned the songs. Strength Beyond Strength. I will say, when I first heard Strength Beyond Strength, and when did I buy this album? Let me check my dates. I bought this album on March 24th, 1994, which was very likely the first day it came out. These were in the days when I used to, when a lot of people, the real music fans, especially metal fans, when you used to go and buy, they were on Tuesdays, used to buy the records on the first day they came out. So when I first, and I didn't need to hear it to know that I wanted to buy it. I was a hardcore Pantera fan. So when I first heard Strength Beyond Strength, I didn't like it. I remember thinking, nah, you know what? This is too much. Okay, you had Cowboys from Hell, heavier than, say, traditional metal at that time, which was Judas Priest. It was heavier than Judas Priest. And then they were like, the heaviest band around, I think, in 1992. And then when I heard Strength Beyond Strength, I thought, nah, you know what? You went too far. It's just too much. It's too fast, too angry. It just sounds too, it kind of, I don't know if it grated on my ears. I'm talking about the way I'm talking about this is the way that, a 7-year-old woman would talk about AC/DC being too heavy and too angry and too aggressive. But I just didn't like Strength Beyond Strength. That lasted maybe about 1 or 2 listens, because after that I loved it. God, Phil was pissed on this album. Well, how does it start? Sometimes you need a kick. I know this album cold. Just like Appetite for Destruction, any of these classic albums. What's the first line in Strength Beyond Strength? There's nothing, no education, no family life to open my arms to you. Say, my job is today, yet gone tomorrow, be broken a gutter. I know the opinion, a broken record. Just very, very angry. We've grown into a monster. Just brutal music. One of the heaviest albums ever, I would say, and I still haven't even finished talking about it. I would say this, Rain and Blood by Slayer, of course, and Speak English or Die by SOD, Stormtroopers of Death. To me, those are the 3 heaviest albums to ever exist in music history. If you want heavy, Black Sabbath, that was a different type of heavy. But yeah, just unbelievable. The guitars were, as I said, grating, harsh, abrasive, not even aggressive, becoming, God Size, 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken. I'm Broken is I would say, the first real contender for favorite Pantera song of all time. And I'm not even sure it's my favorite on this album. but Unbroken, and I used to love Beavis and Butthead watched Unbroken, and they liked that. That was cool to see. Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills. What a disturbing song. God, what was happening with Phil Anselmo in his life at that time, that he was writing the lyrics for Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills. Hardline, Sunken Cheeks, kind of the same thing. Slaughtered. Maybe the next three songs are, I've never thought about this, but just seeing them in order now, 25 Years, Shedding Skin, and Use My Third Arm, could be the three songs in a row that could be the greatest Pantera songs ever. 25 Years, I vent my frustration at you, old man, after years your ears will hear. You screamed, you tried, it's words of a weakling and promises made by a liar. You never knew the answers to any of my questions, did you? I'm maybe getting these out of order. Now you pick up that splintered chair that was aiming for your head. A head that should have been kicked in long ago. A head that should have been kicked in long ago by me. You never knew the answers. And then the last part, you'll never be the father I am, the bastard father to the thousands. Of the ugly, criticized, unwanted, the ones with fathers just like you. Look to the ground as you choke me up. Does it taste like tequila or failure? It's just brutal. Shedding Skin is even more. Shedding Skin, I guess that's a love song. Blood on my face that came from your face, a mix of kissing and bleeding. Unbelievable. Use My Third Arm. Now Use My Third Arm, I didn't mention. There was maybe it was the 20th, I guess it was the 20th anniversary of Vulgar Display of Power that came out in 2012. And there was a bonus song on there that they had recorded at the time. It was called Piss in the Wind. And which they ended up using part of that song from 92 on Use My Third Arm. And Piss in the Wind, that was also maybe a sign of what Phil Anselmo was going to be like on Far Beyond Driven. Use My Third Arm, again, you could apply today to police brutality or the situation, especially in the United States with police. Arm yourself, a branch, a third arm, expend yourself, crawl inside euphoria, building, blood and water scent. It's like a raping, it's entrapment, boy in a bucket, balls in a bag, servant protect you. His dick, his gun, his brain, his badge. A faster way to kill them all would take too goddamn long. Absorbed through pores. It's just a horrible song, but at the same time, amazing song. Very, very aggressive. I can't say it enough. Throes of Rejection. Every song on this is, my God, I just love this album. I think I gotta give this a kiss. Man, what do you think of that? I just kissed the CD. I love this album. Can't get enough of it. Yet I also can't think of anything else to say about it. This is one that just makes me feel, I don't know if it makes me feel good in a bad way or it makes me feel bad in a good way, but this album does something to me. When I listen to this album, I'm starting to feel it now. I'm changing. And maybe I can talk about that. Pantera fans, and I am one, so don't, not that anybody's watching this, but I'm a Pantera fan. Pantera fans, one thing that was maybe not the best about Pantera, they're fans, and I'm speaking generally, so you can't say, well, I'm not like that, because I'm not like that. But meatheads, knuckle draggers, mouth breathers, whatever you call them. I think Pantera had a real redneck following. And I think because their lyrics were so strong and powerful and aggressive and whatever else, what other adjective you want to use to describe them, I think a lot of their fans kind of felt like that too. And they were, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but Pantera fans were really something else. Now, I did see them on this tour. I don't need to pick the album up again. I'm still talking about Far Beyond Driven. Now the album cover. Yeah, this album cover, it's not bad. I mean, it's not a good one, but it's not laughable like some of the other ones. It is better than the original album cover, which if you've seen that is just, might be their worst, maybe even worse than Metal Magic. So I did see them on this tour. They played in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens in June, I want to say June 10th, June 12th, 15th, something like that, 1994. I have so many memories for that time. The O.J. Simpson thing was happening then. And amazing to think that a band like Pantera was playing a big place like Maple Leaf Gardens. It wasn't the full setup, but it was the concert bowl, which was half. But Pantera was playing Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was amazing. And my friend Jen Crowley, I'll say hello to her now. Hello, Jen. She called me, I don't know if it was the day of or the day before the concert or a couple of days, and she said she had, not that she had tickets to it, but I think it was her father he had a box, a private box at Maple Leaf Gardens. So she said, let's go. If you want to go, we can go. So I saw Pantera in a box from Maple Leaf Gardens, and that was with Sepultura and Biohazard. I loved that concert. I had a really, really good time at that show. I think it was on a Saturday night, which is always the best night for a concert, I think. So Far Beyond Driven, oof! I love it. I mean, what else can I say if I say it's one of my top favorite albums ever? Like I said, I could say more, but I can't think of what to say. So I'm going to go on to the next one. 1996, The Great Southern Trendkill, this was called. This is another one, as I mentioned, with Strength Beyond Strength, when I first heard the title track, the opening song, which was The Great Southern Trendkill. I thought, man, these guys, they're just trying too hard. It's too heavy or too aggressive. I thought, it sounds forced. It sounds like Panthera saying, okay, we want to be heavy. And it just didn't sound natural. And again, like Strength Beyond Strength, probably on the second or third listen, I thought, this song is as good as any Panthera song. And I do still love it, the Great Southern Trendkill, maybe their fastest song. Yeah, that's a great one. Warner, this is another contender, the second song. That's also a contender for top Pantera songs ever. So far we've got maybe a new level, nothing from Cowboys from Hell. Keeping track of this, the Pantera O-meter. By the way, the music outside stopped, I just realized. So we've got nothing from Cowboys from Hell that I would consider my favorite. New level, it's up there, it's pretty good. I'm Broken, 25 Years, Shedding Skin, and Use My Third Arm could be favorites. And also War Nerve. Oh man, War Nerve is just incredible, which was supposed to be titled, I think the original title was Revenge in 96, which is good that they didn't go with that one, because songs with dates in the title, they maybe don't age very well. War Nerve, Drag the Waters was another one. There was a video, that was the first, I guess the lead single. I don't know if you called them single, but that was the one I heard on the radio first, or saw on not MTV, Much Music. Very, very heavy, also angry song. Tens, I like that one too. That I remember actually this album I got, I'm going to say I bought this in May 1996. Yeah, May 7th. 1996. I remember that because I was driving to Montreal that day, and I went in the morning as soon as the mall or the record stores opened, bought this, and then drove to Montreal and went to a Montreal Expos game. Tens, 13 Steps to Nowhere. Tens, I was going to say Tens reminded me of Pearl Jam. That Pearl Jam in 96, I'm not sure if it was out yet, but they had an album called No Code, which I've mentioned. Pearl Jam might be my favorite band ever, and I talked about all their the thing I'm doing now with Pantera, I did with Pearl Jam, and No Code was where Pearl Jam lost me, but I think when No Code, which I think came out after, some of that reminded me, or when I went back and listened to Tens, I'm doing a terrible job explaining this, Tens reminded me of Pearl Jam, which is very, very strange to think of now. 13 Steps to Nowhere, Suicide Note Part 1 and 2, just brutal, especially 2, was maybe even faster or more aggressive than Great Southern Trendkill. Living Through Me, how's Rat? That's also, I wouldn't say one of my favorites ever, but one of my favorites on this album. Floods, a lot of people consider that to be Dimebag's best solo. I don't really pay too much attention to solo. When I hear them, I think, that was awesome. I love that. But I can't really go through a band's catalog and say, I love the solo in this song, this song, this song, until I hear them. But although I do love the solos in, I mentioned earlier, which one was it? Walk and I'm Broken. Great solos. The Underground in America and Sandblasted Skin. I love this album. Really, really love it. There are a couple that were not quite my favorites. I would say the only two that, Floods and 13 Steps to Nowhere were never favorites. But other than that, this I probably do like this. I'll do the ranking at the end where I would put this. Far Beyond Driven for sure is number one. So Great Southern Canada, but a terrible album cover. It's just a snake, a rattlesnake. I mean, cool picture, but what does that have to do with anything? I'm not sure. It just seemed very lazy just to use a stock photo as an album cover, and it got worse after this. Panthera never came to Toronto on this tour, or if they, I don't think they did. I remember waiting for it. I don't think Panthera never came to Toronto on this tour. So I missed that tour. What else can I say about this? I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah, so excellent album. Really, really good. I'll put them in order when, there's only 5, so I can do it. So I would say this is on the same level as Far Beyond Driven as far as the abrasiveness or all the words I used. Very, very angry, pissed off album. Even that doesn't really explain it. Next, now they had a live album. Pantera put out a live album. This was recorded on the Great Southern Trendkill tour, which I didn't see. I've mentioned before, I have, for me, live albums are kind of hit or miss. I would say this was more of a hit than a miss. This wasn't one that I listened to as much as I did like Kiss Alive or Live After Death or Worldwide Live, but I did listen to it a lot. There were some good versions on this. The end of, what did they, there was, they didn't do By Demons Be Driven, but they used to put the intro to be Demons By Demons Be Driven on the end of, what song was it? I don't know if it was, can't remember. Mouth for War wasn't on this album. I just remembered that now. It's not on here. Now the something I can say about Phil Anselmo, unrelated to this album. I'm just going off here a little bit. Phil Anselmo is one of my favorite people in music, but also one of the biggest dicks. To me, he reminds me of Axl Rose. He doesn't look like him. He doesn't sing like him. He doesn't have the same style. They're totally different. But I mean, just in the fact that, excuse me, that they both can be very, very, very funny, I think. Very, very charming, very friendly, very, very likable. But they can turn into real dicks, as I said. I'm not sure. I think with Phil, maybe it was because of drugs. With Axl, maybe it was because maybe he wasn't all there. Maybe a little bit of drugs. But one of the examples of Phil just being, and also of this meathead knuckle-dragging attitude that I think a lot of Pantera fans had. And they did kind of like a little bit of a medley of Domination and Hollow. And I remember on this album, it starts, it's just bass. It's dun-dun-dun, 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 dun-dun-dun. And Phil says, "You hear the bass? Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun. Answer me. You hear the bass?" To me, I thought that was kind of, even at the time, I thought, give me a break, Phil. Come on. Like, answer me. What can you say about Phil? I would love to, people talk about, I'd love to have a beer with this guy. Not that I would love to have a beer with Phil Anselmo. He's a guy I would really like to have a really good conversation with. I think he'd be a very, very interesting guy to talk to. One of them, I think, for me, one of the most compelling figures, and I know he's had his problems, and if you want to talk about his the thing a few years ago with white power and everything. I understand that unbelievably stupid thing to do, but I think he's a very, very interesting, compelling guy. And another, now that I think of it, another parallel I can draw between him and James Hetfield, as I mentioned earlier, they're probably the two guys that I'm maybe the most thankful that are still alive, because I think both those guys could be dead. I think especially Phil. They both had problems. I think Phil much more serious than James Hetfield. But Phil Anselmo was one of my, or maybe still is one of my favorite guys of that time. Just amazing singer, amazing frontman. His lyrics were also just, I don't want to say amazing 3 times in a row. But Phil Anselmo was a real character, or a real interesting guy. Now the other thing about this album that was really cool, I think something that makes live albums worthwhile. Kiss did it with a Live 2. They put 4 songs. They tacked 4 songs at the end of a Live 2. Pantera did a couple of ones on here, Where You Come From and I Can't Hide. I love both those songs. Those songs would have fit perfectly on any of the 2 albums that came before, or the 1 album that came after. I think Where You Come From, it had the Pantera groove. It maybe would have fit in very nicely on Vulgar Display of Power. I Can't Hide, I think was maybe it could have been a Great Southern Trendkill or Far Beyond Driven song. Very, very heavy, fast, aggressive song. But I love both of those songs. Those are great. As I said, they could have put those on an album and they would have been fantastic. So when you put them on a live album as a bonus, as kind of, giving you a little bite, fantastic. I love it. The album cover, still not the best. It's obviously a Jack Daniels inspired thing, and not as bad as some of the other ones. But did I mention the album? This is called 101 Proof Official Live. So there it is. Pretty good live Pantera album. Now I did see them again in my Pantera concert history. I saw them, I don't know if they did a tour. I saw them in January 98. They were, I guess, kind of between albums. It wasn't exactly on the Great Southern Trendkill tour. It was maybe just like a tour to fill the gap between albums. I saw them on that tour in January 98 with Anthrax in Toronto. Very, very cold night, obviously. And loved it too. That was in a place called the Warehouse in Toronto, which was very, very small place compared to where I'd seen them 4 years earlier at Maple Leaf Gardens with probably 5,000 people there. I think the Warehouse was maybe 1,000 or 1,500, maybe 2,000 at the most. I'm not sure. Loved it. It was great to see Panthera in a place so small and relatively close. And I was a huge, and still am a huge Anthrax fan. So for Anthrax, and also Coal Chamber was on that show too. Don't care about them. But Anthrax did a cover of Dethroned Emperor by Celtic Frost, or Dethroned Emperor by Celtic Frost, and Phil Anselmo came out and sang it. And I love that song, and I'm not a huge Celtic Frost fan, but I do like Celtic Frost a lot. So it was pretty cool. Anthrax, one of my favorite bands, with Phil Anselmo from one of my favorite bands, one of my favorite singer, covering a song that I really, really liked. That was pretty cool. And now about my Pantera shirt history, as you may have guessed, based on what I've said about the Pantera albums, I've never had a Pantera shirt in my life, either official from the shows that I saw them, or from El Chopo. If you don't know what El Chopo is, you'll have to search on the YouTube for my name, or check my channel for El Chopo. I was just there about a month ago. Their album covers sucked, and all their artwork sucked, which obviously then, that means their shirt sucks. So I've never had a Pantera shirt. There you go. The next and the last Pantera album, this was 2001. This was called, was it 2000 or 2001? 2001. No, 2000, huh? Oh, I guess their last show that they ever played was, I bought this March 22nd, 2000, 20 years ago. Hard to believe that the last Pantera album was 20 years ago. And what a shame that is. So this is called Reinventing the Steel. I'll talk again about making the mistake of reading comments when you see things online, you read people's comments. Dumbass comments. And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from making comments about this video, but on YouTube or on these metal websites or Facebook, or I don't use Twitter, but you know, social media. It seems that people generally don't like this album. I love it. I think I would say this is my second favorite Pantera album. Far Beyond Driven is far beyond anything else. But for me, I like this better than Vulgar Display. I like it better than Great Southern Trendkill. I like it infinitely better than Cowboys from Hell. And I don't know why people don't now. Also, horrible album cover. Maybe they're worse. It's just a picture of a guy jumping through flames. I'm sure the flames are photoshopped. And he's holding a bottle. I don't know if it's a bottle of whiskey or beer or what it is. Stupid album cover. Rotten. That doesn't affect the music though. And I don't know why people don't like this. Maybe I've talked about this before. Sometimes people, the more you listen to something or watch something or know something or get familiar with it, it's hard for it to have that same impact. I've used that word 1,000 times when I'm talking about these things. If this were their first album, or if it came out after Cowboys from Hell, people would have loved it. Same with, I think, Metallica, Death Magnetic, which is one of my favorite albums of the last 20 years. And for me, maybe better than Ride the Lightning, maybe. But people, you know, generally didn't like it because they said, well, it wasn't as good as Master of Puppets, or it wasn't as good as Kill 'Em All. So I'm not sure why people don't like this. To me, it was the next in line from Vulgar Display of Power, or even Cowboys from Hell, Vulgar Display of Power, Far Beyond Driven, Great Southern Trendkill. This was the next logical place. It sounded like Pantera. There was nothing really different about it, which is maybe why people didn't like it. Although I think in the metal world, it's more likely if they don't like something, it's because they did change, not because they didn't change. I love it. Hellbound is the opener. Goddamn Electric. That's my #1 Panthera song. Some of the other ones were close, but I think Goddamn Electric is probably my #1 favorite Pantera song ever. I think a couple of these songs on this album were kind of about music, or maybe about Pantera as fans of music, or the way their fans saw them. And then really cool about this that they mentioned Black Sabbath and Slayer, which there are not too many bands, especially metal bands, who are name dropping other bands. I thought that was cool. Kerry King, of course, plays the solo in this. Apparently one take, and it was recorded backstage on a portable studio. And the story is that Dimebag was outside, and when he heard it, he came running in the studio and said, don't let him, when Kerry King was playing, he said, don't let him do another take. He said that's what they want. I feel like I should talk more about Goddamn Electric. I just love that song. It's also got that great Pantera groove. Yesterday don't mean shit. If they're Pantera, they should be saying shit, like bunk on the wire. That's Southern. You've Got to Belong to It. Revolution Is My Name. That was the first video or single from that album. Cool video. They had Kiss. It was kind of like, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, Pantera talking about music. And that's another one. It's got the just incredible that no other band did it like Pantera, that Pantera groove. Which Pantera I think was good. They weren't thrash. They definitely weren't thrash, but they did attract a lot of, I think, thrash metal fans like me, and I'm sure a lot of other people too. Death Rattle, very fast. That's kind of a thrashy song. Will Grind That Axe for a Long Time. That's another, I would say, a contender for one of my top Pantera songs. I'd say Goddamn Electric. Yesterday Don't Mean Shit. Will Grind That Axe for a Long Time. Those are three amazing songs. Uplift. Uplift had a part in the middle that reminded me of Led Zeppelin. The middle part of was it Whole Lot of Love? I don't know, just for a few seconds, reminded me of Led Zeppelin. The breakdown, the part in the middle. It Makes Them Disappear, I Cast a Shadow. I love this album. Again, for people who don't like it, I'm not sure why, because I think it's great. I think it's heavy, it's aggressive, it's got all the hallmarks of Panthera, all the things you want from Panthera. And they just announced, I think this week or last week, that they've done this with all the albums, starting from Cowboys from Hell. I guess it's a 20th anniversary edition coming out maybe November, I think, this next month. I didn't mention, I'll go back and, if I remember, I'll go back and talk about the Great Southern Trendkill a little bit, the anniversary edition of that. So I think a double disc 20th anniversary edition of Reinventing the Steel coming out, which I think is, I think the same thing as what they did with Great Southern Trendkill. It was basically, I think, a remastered, which I'm not really that big on remasters, but a remastered version and then also a remixed version, which they did with Great Southern Trendkill. It had, I think, some demos or some alternate takes, and it was pretty good, that one. I didn't buy it. I do have it digitally on my phone, and it was pretty good for that style of album. I'm not really, as I said, a big fan of remixes and demos and outtakes. In some cases, they're really, really good, but sometimes they're not so good. I did like that one, so I guess that's what's going to happen with Reinventing the Steel. Also, a terrible album title: Reinventing the Wheel, Reinventing the Steel. Really, really bad. But it's Panthera. So that's it. That was the last Panthera album, and amazing to think that they would never do another album after that. For me, Panthera, I talked about this when I did these videos for Goldfinger's discography and Saigon Kick. I mentioned that those two, Goldfinger and Saigon Kick, and a third mystery band, were the three bands that really defined the 90s for me. Well, that third band was Panthera, probably more than Goldfinger or Panthera. Panthera defined, and maybe Pearl Jam, at least in the first half of the 90s, Panthera defined the 90s for me. It came out perfectly. Cowboys from Hell came out in 90. The last album came out in 2000. When metal wasn't doing so well at that time, people were starting to kind of move away from metal and listen to what was called grunge, which is one of the stupidest words ever to describe music. But, you know, people were listening to Pearl Jam and who I love, and Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots and Smashing Pumpkins, who I don't love at all, not even a little tiny bit. And who else? Then the second wave, Bush and Seven Mary Three. All this really, in my opinion, really bad music. Mid to late 90s music was, in retrospect, really not very good. Panthera kept it alive. For me, at least kept metal alive. Metallica, I liked Load. I hated Reload, but even Metallica, even though I did like them and I liked Load, Pantera was the one for me that kept metal going. And probably, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. I think I've run out of things to say about Panthera. I'm just going to say one more time how much I love Far Beyond Driven. Best album ever, maybe? Fantastic. So that's it for Panthera, and that's it for me. I'm traveling this week. I'm trading the Mexican sunshine for some Arizona sunshine. I think I should be doing 7 hikes in 7 days. I'm going to be out in the desert with my friend Tom, going to visit him. He lives there. And so I'm taking a break from doing these band album discography, catalog reviews, whatever you want to call them. I've got 3 more in the hopper that I guess I should be doing towards the end of this month, maybe early November, I'm not sure. But that's it. So for Panthera, for Phil, Rex Rocker, Dimebag Daryl, Vince Paul, The Brick Wall, and even Terrence Glaze. That's all for Pantera. That's all for me. See ya.